We'll be starting in just a minute, so everybody kind of sit down and get tough. Tonight's, if you've seen the write-up on tonight's talk, it's something completely different. I'm a chemist, PhD chemist, and I'm wandering into that area of physics and chemistry. A thing called the Heisenberg. Can't hear?
Charles, we lost sound.
Yeah, so he's trying.
Oh. Hello? Hello? No? How about this one? Hello? Hello? Oh, it's not even on. Now it's working. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to get this one working somehow. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's working according to him. At any rate, as Geshe will tell you, it's interesting that on a philosophical level, the Heisenberg principle of subatomic physics, which was devised after Einstein's theory of relativity to try to get what's called a unified theory, like all forces in the universe should be able to be in one equation. You know, that was their dream, and they couldn't quite come up with it because there was something a little bit wrong always. And they could never figure out when they made these measurements to verify it, they could never verify it. And then there's this man, Werner Heisenberg, who said, well, there's this thing called the uncertainty principle. That is, that the more you know about where an atom is in space, the less you know about its momentum. The more you know about the momentum, the less you know about its place in space. You can't know the two things simultaneously. So they're not independent of each other, like in the emptiness. Right? Things cause and effect. And so Geshe has had extensive thinking about that. And we hope some of the physics department people come here. They're very interesting to what they have to think about that. But when he told me he was going to do something on the Heisenberg principle, I was a little bit taken back at first, as I have to say. Oh, that's interesting. And exactly what is that going to be? So I went to my book to make sure I knew all the equations. But at any rate, it's a very interesting thing. And Ben and I had a long talk about it in New York. We've got another one if he wants to do it. We thought of another one, just as interesting. It's not more. Anyway, I think they're getting a microphone on it so that it actually works and all that thing a lot clearer. I can see him. Here he comes. And now for the star of the night, Geshe Roach, returning to Princeton once again, where it all began, I guess. Huh? And we're very happy to have him. It's always a pleasure. I just enjoy having him. Oh, just in case you're going traveling and we have something that you might take with you. At any rate. And so, without further ado, we'll just let him take it away.
just thought to play a little music before we start to relax you and us. And I'd like to welcome all our friends from many places, and especially I'd like to thank Charles Bragg for organizing this event.
Jelly, jelly, bolo, jelly, bolo, san, jelly, puti, sabuha, jelly. Jedi bolo Jedi, bolo Sanjay Puti Saboha. Om Jedi, 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 bolo Jedi. Bolo Sanjay Puti Saboha.
Thank you for coming. So last year we got an invitation to come to Princeton University and give a program for some of the students there. Partly it was yoga, and they were interested in learning. I was trained in some Tibetan styles of yoga in the monastery, so they asked us if we would come and teach that. And I don't know if you know the university, it was in Jilin Gym and like 200 kids showed up. That's kind of weird. And then they asked me to speak at the art museum, I think, about my business. So I was in a business, that's a long story. But anyway, I gave a talk about that. And then there were two young physicists in the crowd. And after the talk, they ran up and they were all excited. And they said, oh, what you described has a lot of applications to quantum physics, you know. And we think you should come back to the university and give a talk on quantum physics and the applications to physics. And so I said, okay. And then I don't know how it ended up here and not the university, but maybe next time it'll be at the university. I think the person who was in charge of it went to Europe or something. So anyway, we're here. I think next year I have to repeat it at the university for the physics people, but I'll practice on you guys, okay? So this is the story. I went to Princeton University, and I was really doing well. I was invited to the White House. I got a medal from the president for scholarship, and I was very happy. And then in the middle of my education in the college, I got a call, and they said, your mother died today, you know? And I was like, I was terribly, how do you say, crushed, you know, completely crushed, because we were very close. I have 4 brothers total, and we had a very tight family, and I was just crushed. And then I didn't know what to do exactly. And then I heard later that my father died and my brother died. And then I remember I was going to class one day. I had never missed a class. And there was an Indian student in my class. And we were, should I use the other mic, you think? Yeah? Maybe I use the other mic. Better? Worse? Same. So anyway, there's an Indian boy in the class, and he was sitting under a tree outside of the 1879 hall, if you know that campus. And he said, don't go to class, sit here with me. And I don't know why, I was in a mood, right? And I said, okay, I'll sit with you, you know. And he said, you can't learn anything here, you have to go to India, you know. And if you want to know what happened to your mother, or you want to know all these things, you have to go to India. And so right there, we made a plan, you know. And I don't know why, I just said, okay. And I took a year off of school, and you know, got my scholarship money sent over. He was supposed to meet me in the New Delhi airport. This is in the days when India was interesting. That was like a chaotic, terrible place, and people starving on the streets everywhere all the time. Anyway, I got there, and he never came. He wasn't there. And I had a 3-month ticket. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any money. So I just took off. I went on a bus. I asked somebody, you know, I want to meet Buddhist people. How do you meet Buddhist people? You know, where do they live? I heard Buddhism started here. Then the guy was very funny. He looked at his watch and he said, you're a little bit late. And I said, what do you mean? He says, oh, Buddhists all died out 1,000 years ago. And he's like, good luck, man. Then I met someone and they said, oh, Tibetan monks are coming out of Tibet. Refugees are coming out of Tibet. And maybe you can meet them. You know. So I did. I ended up in Dharamsala, where His Holiness stays. At that time it was very cool because you could just go to his house and knock on his door and have a conversation with him. It's not like that now. But then, you know, I started studying there, and I stayed in Tibetan monasteries there and here in the States for 25 years, and finished the course of study there, which is called the Geshe. So when I finished and I came, I asked His Holiness, you know, what I should do. You know, what should I go back to the States and like that? And he said, you know, when I first started my studies, he advised me to meet a Lama who he had sent to the United States to serve a Mongolian comic community near here. There's a nun from there. We were friends since those days. And so I stayed there, and I met my teacher, Ken Rinpoche. And he was a great scholar, and we stayed together for 25 years. And he helped me get through the Geshe course. Then at some point, I think it was about, I don't know, 1981, he challenged me. He said, you know, now you've learned all this karma thing, you've learned about karmic seeds. Now I would like you to demonstrate that you understand it well in the real world. If you just stay in the monastery, then you will never have a chance to prove what you understand in real life. You know, if you just sit here and drink tea and meditate, you will never prove to yourself and to other people that you understand how these principles work. So he said, I want you to go to work in Manhattan and start a company. And we will help the refugees. If you make money, we'll help the refugees. And then I want you to help to build a business, say, to $1 million in a year. And let's see if you understand what we've trained you, what we've taught you. And then we had a Mexican standoff. You're not supposed to say no to your teacher. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to New York or start a business. And he, so kind of we just had a silent fight. And I didn't talk about it, and he didn't talk about it. And then finally, one day he came to Rutgers and gave a very beautiful talk. And I was his driver, his cook, his laundry man, his gardener, dishwasher, toilet cleaner. And then I was driving him home, and I said, Rinpoche, that's the most beautiful talk I ever heard. And I'll do anything you want. And he said, New York. Business, next week. So I helped to start a business in New York with 2 other people. And I asked him, what should the business be? And he said, diamond business. Then I said, I don't know a diamond from a golf ball, I don't know anything about diamonds. And he said, that's okay. I saw in meditation you have to do diamonds. So I tried to join the diamond business. That's like trying to join the mafia. And I mean, the big businesses, they don't hire anybody except their own relatives. Because you can walk out of the office with $1 million in your pocket. There's no way to stop you. And but finally I got into a business, and I helped to start a business. And then at some point they trusted me enough to allow me to run my part of the business by myself. And then I used only the principles which I'm going to talk about tonight. And now that business, 2 years ago it was sold to Warren Buffett. It reached $250 million per year, $250 million per year. And I think it has, globally it's about 10,000 workers now. And we started with 3 people and 3 chairs and a little table. We rented a room from another guy. And so he forced me to do an experiment to show if I understood how to tweak reality in a real world situation. Not just in meditation or yoga or something like that. He challenged me to show that I could direct events at will by tweaking reality. And it was very successful. And at some point Doubleday called me and said, will you write a book about it? And they gave me a lot of money. And I said, I'll pay to write a book. They said, no, we'll pay you. And then that book now is all over the world, and we go to hundreds of places. I think we give trainings in hundreds of cities, 156 cities around the world. And we have groups there, and we train business people. At some point, some physicists got a hold of me and said, you should apply these things to how science works, because the principles you've described would be very interesting in a scientific context, right? So pretend you are a physicist at the university, which is the people I prepared this talk for. And I'm not trying to confuse you, this is what I prepared, okay? And I think whatever you do, you will find it helpful for your life, okay? I teach a lot of business people all over the world, many countries. Nowadays, a lot of people have asked me to speak about relationships and how do you apply these principles to relationships, and we're doing that. I think in Hamburg next week we're giving a talk about that, and then in Moscow some business talks. So it's very popular all over the world. This is the first time I've tried to do it in a scientific context, so let's go. The point is that I think what we did with the business shows that with no training, I was not trained in diamond business, I have no training in finance or advertising or marketing or product development. I just used principles that were outlined 2,000 years ago. One of the most important figures in history who described these principles is Arya Nagarjuna. His name is Nagarjuna. And I put his picture on the front of your reading, okay? So that's a traditional carving from the Dalai Lama's palace in Tibet of Nagarjuna. He described in the 3rd century AD, he described the principles we're going to talk about tonight. And so I thought it was fitting that we put him on the cover. The title of this talk is called 6 Interpretations of the Universe. Some of you have had a teaching called Mahamudra, and this is modified from that. I like to call it a better history of time. I had a pleasure to meet someone who's involved with printing Stephen Hawking's books in New York recently. And so actually I would like to take on Mr. Hawking's and try not to overthrow science, but to try to perfect it. I think the ideas in which I was trained, if they were applied to science in general and quantum physics in particular, I think it would clarify a lot of issues, and it would sort of, in my perception, perfect science itself. I don't know, sometimes I like to go to book fairs. You know, Princeton has a really good one every year. I used to deliver the books there. And there are thousands and thousands of books are sold for like a week and a half. And I used to enjoy taking old science books. By the way, if you don't have a reading, can you raise your hand? And Charles will supply you with one. I hope. Just keep your hand up, okay? He didn't memorize everybody. He's making his way to the front. I really enjoy going to book sales, right? Use book fairs like Bookman's, and then I like to buy old science books, like from 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and they are really funny. You know, they are full of really useless and wrong information, but presented very seriously and very, what do you call it? Very formally and as if it were God's truth, you know. And I'm sure the students who were required to read those textbooks felt like, oh, that must all be true, you know. And now from 50 years hindsight, even a lay person, I'm not a scientist, you pick up one of those books and it's obviously crazy and full of mistaken ideas, okay. I would propose that the most modern mathematical presentations of quantum physics at present will seem exactly like that in 50 years, okay? Every generation believes that their presentation of science is the last one and is very sophisticated and very correct. And we live by that, right? And then I'm saying from 50 years from now, people, you know, your grandchildren will look back and look at the Stephen Hawking's presentation and say it was ridiculous. I'm just trying to say it in advance. Okay? I think there's a long way to go in that kind of thinking. And I think that these ancient ideas have a great contribution to make. These are ancient ideas, but they can be applied to your modern life. And what my Lama forced me to do was to prove them to myself in a normal context of a business in Manhattan. I think it was the fastest growing manufacturing company in the history of Manhattan. Okay? Then I did my little experiment, and I didn't use any of the knowledge that was current at that time in business. I ignored it. And I went straight to these 6 ideas, okay? And I'm going to try to convince you that these are useful for everything you want to do, all right? If you want to make money, or you want to find a good partner, or you have some health problem, or you're concerned about world peace, or you're a scientist and you want to take it further, I think these things are revolutionary. I think this ancient wisdom is something that could revolutionize what we do. It has revolutionized business in the countries that we go to, like in Shanghai. We just got back from Beijing and Shanghai, Guangzhou. People are using these principles. And they passed the United States a long time ago. I don't know who makes the statistics, right? But they passed this a long time ago. And part of it, I think, is these ideas are spreading there, and they are getting popular, and people are making immense amounts of money. With a better personal life also. They have a better personal life, and they make huge amounts of money, and they're happy because they are following these 6 principles. So I'm going to apply them to a scientific context, okay? I called it says A Better History of Time, which is already copyrighted, okay? I can't steal it. It's the name of my next book, okay? But it also says one which explains apparent singularities. So, you know, I like the idea of a singularity. It's a big idea in modern physics right now. One of the meanings of singularity is that in an event cone or something like that, that something could happen for the first time, like Big Bang. Singularity means a single instance, right? In one context. Could there have been a single event which created the universe? And a lot of modern physics is aimed at tracing back the trajectories of objects passing by us at a certain speed and predicting where and when the universe began. That's a big subject. There was a Big Bang, right? And that was a unique event. In our training, we would say there is no such thing. Okay? There cannot be an event without a cause. There's a certain system called science, which says that. Except they don't say it about the most important thing that ever happened, which was the creation of the universe. So they would say that everything has a cause. All things, we can identify the causes of things by performing experiments. And in that way, we can find the cause of cancer, or we can cause the cause of a nuclear reaction. We can cause things to happen in the world, right? But another meaning of singularity would be, in science, you conduct experiments, and replication is an important idea. Replication means if I have the same circumstances, and if I undertake the same steps or the same procedure to cause a reaction, then given the same steps and given the exact same situation, right? All the causes and conditions are the same, then the result of that experiment should be the same. Like that's the principle behind drug testing or something like that. A drug is not allowed to be released until independently different scientists can try it in controlled environments to see if it creates the same cause for everybody. Because if it kills some people and it heals some other people, then we shouldn't release it. So replication is important. Can you make the same thing happen twice by repeating the same causes, right? That idea is based upon causes. You have to accept causes to have a replication of an experiment. Experimentation only has meaning if you can repeat the causes in a controlled way and make the same thing happen again with a medicine or with a nuclear device, right? It's not going to blow up an hour early while it's still in your truck or something, okay? Like that. I mean, there should be causes and you should be able to trace them. So we're going to discuss singularities in the sense of, for example, we know this is a beautiful building. I've been here once before, I think. It's a beautiful building. Something is holding the building up. there are certain chemical or elements in the wood. They are arranged in certain chains of molecules. The iron underpinning has a certain power. The concrete, which is underlying the structure of the building, has a certain power. All of those objects, the beams that hold up the ceiling right now, and the foundation which holds up the beams, and any iron that's between them, they have qualities inside of them, right? And we test those qualities, and we make iron beams of a certain width, and we have engineers decide how wide the beams have to be, the angles, the correct angles of the roof, the pitch of the roof, and we replicate or we repeat the conditions which will keep the building up, because that's in our interest. We don't want buildings falling down or under. Right? And that's a lot of science. A lot of science, as we experience it in our everyday lives, is